Good morning, everybody. Great to have all of you here. Thank you to our presenters. I know that Garrett has pre-arranged. He's dropping his kids off, so he is on our speaker slate, but he'll be arriving right on time. We've got a great speaker slate today to kick off our February. Before I introduce our first speaker, I want to remind everybody that today is the final day to get in your ticket request for Monday's Forum Speaker Series Luncheon. We feature President and founder of Willamette Valley Vineyards, Jim Bernot. He'll be accompanied by his new CEO, Mike Osborne, and it is entitled A Truly Unique Oregon Story, the story of Willamette Valley Vineyards. We'll hear about where they were, where they've come to rise certainly in national and international prominence, and where they're going next. They will even have a little bit of a wine tasting for us along the way for those that wish to enjoy a little micro pour. So we're not going to give you a full-fledged wine tasting, but a little bit of the flavors of Willamette Valley Vineyards. Thank you to our partners at Hagen Hamilton Insurance Solutions for being our presenting sponsor all season long. And those tickets wrap up today. We have a great full room, but if you are interested in participating and being there on Monday, we'd love to have you. First up today, obviously we've kicked off the short session, and we're very proud as an organization to partner with Nicole Palmateer Hazelbaker, who represents our organization as our contract lobbyist. Nicole has a long history in the building and is very widely respected by her peers in representing many of the needs of the business community and represents a number of clients here in Oregon as well as nationally. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to kick us off and give us what's going on in the building because it is moving quickly.
It is moving quickly. I'm always bummed I'm not sitting out there because a friend of mine would always describe our profession as minor league influence peddlers. So if I was sitting out there, that's what I would say I'm doing. We are in the short session. Today is day 4, not that we're counting, of 35 days, 31 left to go. As Tom said, we've kicked it off and we kicked it off really fast. The short session is a 35-day session by statute. So things move so much faster than they do in the long, good and bad. I mean, it's easy to kill something in the short session. It's hard to pass something unless you have a deal up front. But what you have in this session is very much this overarching cloud about the budget, about money, about what's happening next, about instability. What's been really interesting for me is coming into the session and meeting with a lot of people over the last couple of weeks, not a strong sense of the direction or path forward. For example, yesterday was the revenue forecast. This is a revenue forecast that will define how they choose to move through the session and how they choose to spend money. You may have heard when we first came out of this session, the first revenue forecast said, oh my God, there's a huge hole. The next revenue forecast said there's kind of a hole. It's like 63 million. It's not a lot in budget dollars. This time, yesterday we came in, John Hawkins and I were sitting in there, and the latest forecast shows a jump in corporate taxes of 95 million. It shows that personal income is coming in 42 million lower than they were 3 months ago. In total, the general fund revenues were up 106 from the previous forecast where there was a deficit. So grand total out the door from the close of session when they forecast how much money they're going to have in excess of the budgets that they passed to spend, we're up to $161 million. We don't have a hole anymore as it pertains to what the budgets were or how they spent their money coming out of that 25 session. We are back up. What was interesting about that conversation was a couple of things, and John, feel free to jump in here. Our new state economist had said that we've downgraded the chances of Oregon slipping into a recession down to 20% from 25 in his last forecast. But we also see some what I would say are very disturbing trends. Lower payroll, which is unusual outside of a recession, lower growth in Oregon, slower population growth. They say that almost 100% of growth in Oregon will be due to in-migration, not birth rate. Higher unemployment in Oregon than you see nationally. All those things, yet corporate taxes are going up. So with that, we have this conversation happening about the disconnect. As you'll remember, the federal administration has passed HR 1, and there's a wide variety of different tax cuts that would be beneficiary. Oregon traditionally reconnects. So whatever you do on your federal taxes is the same taxable income and the same definition that you're going to have here in Oregon. The proposal on the table coming into this has been, we want to disconnect some of that. Oregon wants to not allow some of those federal tax cuts to move forward into your Oregon taxes in order that they can keep that revenue. So there's an argument on both sides of that. One side would say these are tax cuts that are meant to stimulate the economy, meant to allow money to be spent in the state, allows for continued economic growth and development. It's your money. You should get to keep it. The other side would say we need that money. We're in a time of crisis. We have all of these uncertainties happening in Medicaid and education and et cetera, et cetera. We need to take this opportunity to take some of that money back. I will let you decide where you think I sit on that issue. But so we have a bill, Senate Bill 1507. Senate Bill 1507 looks, I've been asked this, the number one question, is they're trying to pass a sales tax? No, it's a gut and stuff bill. They just put that on there because it gives it the correct relating to clause to let the bill move throughout the session. Senate Bill 1507 is a bill from Senator Broadman primarily as the new chair of Senate Finance and Revenue. He has very much been put into that role to pass a disconnect. And he was very clear with us. We met with him on behalf of my client, the Oregon Society of Certified Public Accountants, and was very clear. That's why he's there. You'll recall last session, they tried to do a bit of a disconnect with Senator Mark Meek, who's more moderate. He would not move it off the Senate side, and so the bill died. So he was moved to a new committee. He got a new committee, new chair. But Senator Broadman is there to do that. There are a couple of versions of the bill under consideration. Senate Bill 1507 with the -3 amendments would be just a rolling reconnect. We like that. There's some extensions of some tax credits, but there's no disconnect from the tax code at all. And you heard some of the groups like Oregon Business and Industry testifying in support of 1507 with the -3. I would imagine once the CPAs have a chance to review, I'm guessing we'll probably be fine with that too. But what the real conversation is Senate Bill 1507 with the -5. The -5 amendment, and Jameson has this information if you're interested in it, he can share it with you, carries the disconnect in it. They put it on the Senate side this time, as I was told by House leadership, because they've traditionally passed it, the disconnect on the House side, and it died in the Senate, and they were tired of taking responsibility for that. So they made them do it the other way. So Senate Bill 1507 with the -5 carries some pieces of the disconnect because they want to do it selectively. A vehicle loan interest deduction disconnect, so disconnects from personal income tax for auto loan interest. Qualified small business stock disconnect. So, and that one you would have to ask one of the CPAs in the room a little bit more about that. I will not try to explain it, but it disconnects from personal income tax exclusion, gain from exchange or sale of qualified small business stock. And the big one, bonus depreciation disconnect. So for anybody who utilizes bonus depreciation, you can imagine in my house, I've heard a lot about that from a certain business owner. It disallows bonus depreciation for tax years 2026 and later, requires an add back for federal bonus depreciation on property with a corresponding subtraction of the assets remaining depreciable life. Whew. It's a big one. That one in 25-27 is estimated, if it were to disconnect, to net to the state $267 million. That's the big one. That's the one that they really, really want from the pro disconnect side. They would say, but we've given a couple things too. They're increasing the Oregon Earned Income Tax Credit from 9% to 14% for low-income wage earners. And then they want to create a credit for taxpayers creating jobs, a non-refundable personal corporate income tax credit for job creation. The credit equals $1,000 times the number of jobs created in a year. And we've heard a lot about that over the last few days. Yeah, but we're doing that too. It's estimated to cost the state maybe $12 million a year. So 12 million versus 267. I don't feel like we're really getting our money's worth here. But so that is where the conversation is centering right now. Given what we heard in the revenue forecast, the logical answer is, and Representative Werner Reschke, who is the vice chair of House Revenue, testified yesterday and said, now is not the time. Like, we have more money coming in. We have a moment to take a pause here. Let's put this aside, let's just let things ride for a minute. I would say that primarily most of the business community is on that same side. As John and I have been talking about, and I'm sure most of you know about, with bonus depreciation, that's something you plan ahead of time. You know, you make those thoughts and consider how you're going to navigate your finances in the calendar year based on understanding that that is going to be in place. This upends that for people who are, and it's significant, you know, and I think there were a number of people who testified yesterday and said, you know, you're not really, you know, you're just kicking the can down the road. You're not really changing it, but you're making things harder right now at a period of time where payroll is down, unemployment is up. People are, you know, people are having a harder time to living in Oregon, which is why people aren't living in Oregon. So this is where the conversation sits. They have decided this is a simple majority vote because they're not creating a new tax, they're just disconnecting. They say that it can be done by simple majority. So what happens now? It's a great question. This bill sits in a revenue committee. The revenue committees do not have a deadline, so these bills live on throughout the session. There have been rumors around potential walkout based on this, as well as some other things. We'll see. You know, I think that everyone was kind of waiting to hear what that revenue forecast picture was. If things were way down again, this would be yet again another conversation, but things are up. And what we heard, and I found this fascinating yesterday, is we just have the revenue forecast. We move into the public hearing on the disconnect, but Senator Broadman, the chair, was ready. His opening statement, I mean, he obviously, of course, he knows what the revenue forecast is going to be, but was like, yes, it's great we have more money, but we really have to think ahead. You know, there are challenges coming and blah, blah, blah. And we really need to, you know, it is very clear he is here to pass the disconnect. So if my money was on it, it certainly is going to make it out of the committee. And then what happens after that will be a little bit of a gamble on their part of when it hits the floor and when it doesn't. So if you're interested in having commentary on it, you have 48 hours after the close of the hearing to submit written testimony. So you still have another day if you wish to do that. But it will be an ongoing conversation around what's going to happen about that. Our first deadline is Monday, February 16th, will be the chamber deadline when bills have to have moved off the floor unless they go to a committee that remains open, which would be the joint committees and the revenue committees and the rules committees. Outside of that, if it's just a straight policy bill, then you have to have it out of the chamber by the 16th. They'll have another deadline by Thursday, February 26th. You must have it off of the second side chamber, and we finish up in time for filing day on March 10th. Filing day is the last day for candidates to file to run in the primary in Oregon, and that is basically the kickoff to the campaign cycle. As you've all seen, there's a lot going on in the campaign cycle this year. We have a lot of people interested in trying to set a course for the state, and we are going to see what happens. Something else you've heard a lot about, but we finally just saw the bill today, Senate Bill 1599, is the proposal that would move that transportation tax referral referendum that gained so many signatures, would move it from the November ballot, where it's currently slated to be, up to the May ballot. If you've read anything in Oregon politics over the last couple of months, you've read about this. So the referral gained signatures unlike anything we've ever seen before. Volunteer-led, no paid signature gatherers, fanned out around the state in a remarkable, really a remarkable effort. And under that proposal, this measure and that vote to choose to either keep or overturn that tax package should be on the November ballot. In general, one would say that, of course, if you're running for office, you don't want a very, 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 very unpopular tax vote to sit next to your name on that ballot. They would like to move it to May. Less people show up in the May election. You're not on the same ballot as the governor. You're not on the same ballot as representatives and senators. It would just be a better place to be. You know, in a popularity contest, you know, you don't want to be by the unpopular one. So what happens? This has been, it is allowed to be done. They have a short time period to do it, because if they were to move it to the May ballot, if there's timing as far as how things show up in the voters pamphlet and ballots and, you know, the whole 9 yards. That and the reconnect right at this moment are two of the very prominent topics that are being talked about right now in the halls. But that revenue forecast, I would say, has changed the conversation a little bit. When I was walking down the hall after it and I was talking to the Senate president later, I said, I heard people spending that money like down the hall and right back up the hall, like all the time versus when we walked into the door. John, am I missing anything on the reconnect? If you would like more information, talk to him. If you want to know how the vote's going to go, talk to me. But those are the kind of the high points right now. We are following a number of bills. Certainly our friend Jason Brandt could talk to you a lot about the TLT. And there are a number of other proposals out there that we are watching. Things are moving fast right now. Jameson and Tom have updates and reports, so you can always check in with them. But I always encourage you to be involved, be engaged, make your voice heard when there's something that is of interest to you. Oregon is still a process where people's voice really does matter. And with that and staying on my time, I will stop. Thank you so much. And I apologize. I have to go back to the Capitol after this.
And I want to give him a moment to think about this. It's not often we have Jason here. Jason is a Salem resident, he's a friend of this organization, of course. Jason, if you want to touch base a little, just give you a couple minutes to think about what we take Q&A for Nicole. But yes, I'd love to have you discuss. John, go ahead.
Hey, would it be possible for you to make it easy for us to submit comment on the reconnect by sending this group or maybe even a larger group a link?
Absolutely. Have we not done that already?
Yeah,
it was on Tuesdays. We did give it out, but we can resend it to our group here in this room today. Although I noticed most did not give emails. We'll have to do some digging, but we can get that done, John. In fact, let's do this a little different. If you're interested in sending some comments, if you could connect with Jameson, it'd be pretty hard to send out this or it's in our business connector on Tuesday.
I have your email. I'll send it to you.
We'll send out a thank you for an additional.
There we go.
Or you want to you? Just find me afterwards and make sure I have your email.
For some perspective, in the last legislative session, the chamber that participated the second most had 16 testimonies, and that was the Portland Business Alliance. We had 33 as an organization. So we are representing you and your commentary in a huge amount, and it is noticed by our legislators, both locally and statewide. We often partner in a lot of those efforts with the Oregon State Chamber, and we are already 3 testimonies in 2 days. So do know that we are very active on your behalf. Thank you, Jeffrey. Yes, Chris.
What's your opinion as far as the likelihood that the transportation actually makes it on the May ballot?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, it's a simple majority vote, so they clearly have the vote to do it. But this has been so poorly managed from start to today. The optics are really, really bad right now because every move, and they even, I think, certainly in a hot mic moment a little bit, they caught the Senate president in a town hall. They said, is this political? It's like, yeah, it's totally political. And then they've been walking it back really fast after that. You know, the optics are bad. And I think they're willing to weather that storm for it, but public sentiment's not on their side, and they know that. And I've talked to a lot of these people. I'm sure Jason has too, over the last few weeks. They know that this hasn't been managed well. There's a lot of ways, I don't like it, but there's a lot of ways you could have done this better. So, I think they plan to push it to a vote. It will be a matter of whether the Republicans choose to allow them quorum to do it or not. And I think that's the big question. But if it gets there, they'll pass it. They have the votes.
Additional questions for Nicole? I've been asked a few times, Tom, what does it mean when you say we have a contract lobbyist? And I always take it for granted as somebody who used to work in the building myself. This organization's board of directors makes an annual strategic investment to have an actual lobbyist, a registered lobbyist, work on our behalf. Every few years, we put that out to bid, and I'm very proud to say a number of our lobbyists replied and showed interest. But for the 3rd consecutive time, we've moved forward with Nicole. So we have a dear relationship with Nicole. We do at all times make sure to offer the services that we're paying out to our entire membership. But I think we're all very pleased and recognize Nicole stepping up. Her and her husband are both business owners here in this city and members of this longtime members of this organization. And she hears directly from our board of directors team, from our advocacy team, and then she takes our messaging, brings it forward into the Capitol, but conversely takes what's happening in real time. So yesterday, as an example, we received 3 real-time emails from Nicole. Now, she does that, I'm sure, to all of her clients, but she tailors it specifically to what the small business community would be interested in hearing. And then Jameson and myself filter that information. Jameson puts it into his updates that come to you, and our board are made aware of a few others. So it is a really dynamic that a chamber of commerce, there's only a few chambers of commerce in the state that have a contract lobbyist. In addition, we have Jameson Gideon, who spent 10 years in the state capitol and is still a practicing lawyer. Our organization invests heavily in advocacy on behalf of our small businesses. So know if you have a voice and you're wondering how to convey that voice, it simply starts with these 2 individuals taking that to the top. Any other questions for Nicole? Yes, Dick.
Nicole, how come no one talks about the federal money? You know, that Oregon, Washington, California are so PO because of the federal, and we're missing, especially in the insurances. For
Right.
Hospitals. So.
I think that you hear that from the Republicans, but it's drowned out a lot by the Democrats.
Free money, so to speak.
No other questions? Nicole, thank you for your time here. And Jason, if you are now able to, let me
See you over there.
introduce Jason Brandt, previously served as CEO of the Salem. Jason, come on up if you don't mind. And sorry to put you on the spot. We only found out you were attending yesterday. So this is great to have you. Nicole, thank you for your work. Jason Brandt serves as CEO of the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association. There are but a few organizations the Salem Chamber really partners deeply with throughout the year. Orla is certainly one. Oregon Business and Industry and the Oregon State Chamber are others that we partner very closely with. They, the last session, and now coming into this session, our TOT and where are those funds that when people go into communities have really been on the menu to redirect out of economic development and now into other budgets. And so I'd like to invite Jason, and thank you so much for being here. Jason, just give us your thoughts on what you're facing and where we can help as individuals.
So great to be here again. I spent 11 years of my life in this building. And if you were to go back to 2004, I moved into Tom's office before Tom moved to Don Poncho. And he takes a look at me, which was rightfully so. He looked at me and goes, "What's this guy doing here?" I was very
not true.
I was so 22 years old, super green, huge shoes to fill, like coming into that office after Tom. And then we switched a little bit again there. So congratulations. This is incredible. The turnout you're getting at Government Affairs at 7 is impressive. All right. So if you want to help our industry, you can go to a website. There's a whole campaign that's been launched to really make sure that legislators in the building understand the real world impacts if they increase lodging taxes on the hospitality industry. We are the 3rd largest private sector employer in the state of Oregon. We have friends in this room like Treva, who's served on our board and a co-chair of our government affairs stuff for the state level. So thanks to all of our restaurant and lodging folks here in the Salem area. But please go to savetourismjobs.com if you want to be an ally of our industry as we're under attack. Currently, there's a 1.5% statewide lodging tax that we all pay on top of city and county lodging taxes. So that's for all of us when we go around the state with our friends and family and are having a good time in Bend or at the coast or in the gorge. So that's our reality. But that 1.5%, which is about $43 million, goes exclusively to Travel Oregon. And it's always been that way since the industry agreed to tax itself back in 2003. So for 23 years, we've had an exclusive dedicated revenue stream paid for on top of lodging operators' already high taxes. It's basically a sales tax that goes to Travel Oregon to create the brand for Oregon, to bring in domestic and international audiences to experience what we have here in terms of authenticity. So if you go to savetourismjobs.com, you can learn more about the bills. There's both changes to the local lodging taxes and how those are structured, plus a new 1.25% increase in the statewide lodging tax. And that increase would do nothing to help travel Oregon, and it goes to all these other new things that are not economic development. The 1.25% right now, current collections, that's a $38 million tax increase. $38 million tax increase on lodging operations across the state. And 11 million of that 38 million would be paid by us because we're traveling in our own state and we're going around and having a good time. So 11 out of 38. And none of it goes to Travel Oregon. So the first time in Oregon's history, we're considering opening up a dedicated economic development revenue stream for 4 new state agencies to tap into: Department of Justice, Department of Agriculture, Oregon State Police, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And as of last night at the House Revenue Committee meeting when we were testifying, a 5th group, I believe it's the Oregon Conservation Group. So if you can see what's going to happen here, right? Once we open this door, it will never shut again. It sets us up for a perpetual struggle between state agencies fighting over that resource as far into the future as you can look. So thank you for the chance just to speak to it. We're obviously very passionate about it, but you can make a difference by joining us as an ally if you care about targeted tax increases on specific industries at that website, savetourismjobs.com.
Thank you, Jason.
Yep.
Appreciate the brief update.
Yep.
Any questions for Jason on that? Our organization has already signed off on the letters to make sure to be in support of Orla. No questions? Great. We're going to move into our next piece of the program and get localized. It's great to have Matt Geiger here, Executive Director of the Chemeketa Small Business Development Center. Matt is going to give us an update on what is occurring at the center and how business owners and employees can tap into the plentiful resources over at Chemeketa. Matt, great to have you back on the panel.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. And I don't know if you noticed, we both got the same memo today, blue suit,
Oh, good.
plaid shirt and the light shoes. So I don't know if you guys weren't on the email, but cool. I guess they got it going up. I will stay seated because I know there's the camera. I'm not used to sitting down. I talk and interact with the audience all the time when I present. So first, a little about me. A lot of people, I'm still new to Salem, so I take for granted sometimes that people don't know who I am and my background. So I ran my own insurance agency in Woodburn starting in 2003, sold that in 2015, did a little stint in healthcare management as well as some CFO work for a construction company. So basically my 20-year business career has been business management and operations and strategic planning. When I got the call from Chemeketa to consider this position, I was super excited. It's the first time they've ever had a true business person in the role rather than a hybrid academic or a full academic running what we do at the Small Business Development Center. So it's been a super exciting journey. And I've been there just 13 months. So while I've been not as intimate with Salem over my career, the last 13 months has been great to be involved and see all the great work that you guys are doing down here. So, what is let me make sure this works. Oh, look at that. So what is the SBDC? So you're going to hear a lot of acronyms today too. If anybody glazes over or goes, what is that? Just raise your hand and I'll explain. In college, higher ed and government work, sometimes we get into alphabet soup. So thinking everybody also knows what we're talking about. So the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center, is a statewide program. We are located at all the community colleges in Oregon. And so ours is located here in Chemeketa. We serve our home office is in Lane. We serve the very south part of Clackamas, like one little area, Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties, but not Newburgh. So that's another weird carve out. We don't serve Newburgh. That's actually Portland Community College. It's a unique system in the country. It is a nationwide program funded out of the SBA and Business Oregon locally, and then the college has to do a cooperative match as well to fund us. Most of the SBDCs in the country are at state colleges or private colleges and universities. So we are unique in that we're a community college base. There we go. So what do we do? So our number one task at the SBDC is one-on-one confidential, no-cost business advising. Because of our funding sources, we have coaching and advising free to small businesses in Oregon. And that small business is 100 employees or less 10 million or less in top line revenue. So we use the SBA definition of a small business, which in Oregon is 97% of all businesses. So pretty much everybody, we can help you. We are there for the life of your business. What we say is we'll get you to a spot where you fire us and have to hire your own CFOs, COOs, business coaches, consultants, etc. So these are the key areas. I won't go into all detail on all of them, but these are the key areas we do. So strategic planning from, once again, business start to growth to exit. Marketing and branding. We have 2 marketing specialists on staff. One is a branding and storytelling expert. The other is a digital marketing and social media expert. We do financial management and sales. That's actually my field. So I do a lot of sales training. I'll come in and do my advisor team calls it, they had to call the big dog in. So they have a client and then they call me to have a joint advising session. I go help the client for maybe 1 or 2 sessions, then pass it right back to the main advisor. And then finally is exit planning. It's actually something we're starting to become a focus in. There's actually an exit planning seminar coming up for our advisors, which I'm really excited that about half of them have signed up to do. If you haven't heard of a term called the silver tsunami, anybody heard of that yet? All right, that is coming. So basically what it is the boomer group of people that changed how high school works in America. Then now they're changing how the workplace, and now they're going to change how retirement and passing businesses on to the next generation is going to hit. There's going to be a wave of businesses where people do not have heirs that want to take over the business, or the businesses will just maybe possibly go away completely. So there's a huge opportunity for new business owners and entrepreneurs to buy existing businesses and help retirees, so to speak, and business owners move on to the next stage. Pretty exciting. So exit is not always negative. That's the other thing I like to say. Exit is usually positive if you do it right. So did it go? That's one for me. All right. So what's our value added? So we're tracked 100% on impact that we collect from our clients. So this is in 2025 statistics, we started 13 new businesses, meaning we had a direct hand in their business. That doesn't mean we didn't help more new businesses that year. We can only collect impact on a new business start is if they come to us pre-venture, right? So if they started and filed their LLC and been working for a month and got stuck, then called us, we don't get credit for the start, right? We actually helped close to 100 first-year businesses last year, but once again, it's not a measurable statistic for SBA. Unique clients served. So this is probably the biggest number that I'm excited about. In 2024, I started like 2 weeks left in December. So all those numbers for 24, I had no impact on. Our center had a roughly 230 unique clients served. We almost doubled that this year in our first year. Biggest thing was a focus on getting out to the rural communities and advising where people are instead of just, we're in Salem, please come see us, McMinnville, Dallas, Staten, right? So I made a pointed effort. I recruited an advisor out in Dundee, who actually works in McMinnville, Dayton, and that whole area. And I recruited recently in June a new advisor that's in Dallas that'll serve Polk County. Also made sure that all new hires from my other advisors were willing to drive around and actually visit businesses instead of just remote or at our center. So super excited. We almost hit 400 unique clients last year. And we also doubled our advising hours. So we had 1,058 advising hours last year alone. If you quantify that on an average consultant fee, that's close to $2.5 million worth of advising that we did, direct advising to clients, because it's average about $225 an hour is what a consultant costs. So for what we do. Capital formation. This is a big thing we're counted on. This is how much actual dollars went into the hands of our clients that we had a hand with, once again. So this is grants, CDFI money, SBA loans, small business loans. Maybe they did their own fundraising campaign and raised some bootstrap money. That's their number there. And then capital formation count is another thing we're counted on. It was 18 total transactions that equated to the 2.2 million. And then 49 jobs created. So this is the one number that is slightly down. However, our center in Marion County was less down than others, if that makes sense. PCC had a really dramatic drop, almost 40% drop. Our drop was about 20% year over year. But that number has already started increasing. We already have 10 jobs created already in January so far. So that is, once again, we have a direct hand, meaning somebody called us and said, I need help with an interview. I need help with job descriptions. I need help with my HR handbook, right? I'm going to expand. Can I afford an employee, right? That type of thing. That's the type of advising we do. So these are our key programs and partners. one of the other things that I am very big on is we are not a silo, right? Chemeketa touches everybody. The name Chemeketa actually means gathering place in the native language from this area. That's why they called it that place. So our primary role at times is being a convener and being I call it a master of information. So that's really what we are. We're a resource hub. So once again, a lot of acronyms here, but we work with SEDCOR and the LBA, so Latino Business Alliance, to facilitate a program called the Latino Micro Enterprise Development Program. It's part of a Future Ready Oregon Technical Assistance Grant, where this current grant starts February 25th. It's a 12-week course for emerging small businesses or first-generation business owners. It is taught in English, translated into Spanish if needed. And we'll be hosting it at CCBI, free again to all participants. This is now the 10th cohort to go through this program, and we're close to 400 people served on that. Really neat program. Salem Capital Connections. Who's been to Salem Capital Connections yet? Again, yeah. All right, well, it's rebooted. So working with the Secretary of State's office and the Office of Small Business Assistance, the ombudsman there, Greg, we now have the last Tuesday of every month at my center at 7:30, an opportunity for you to network with state agencies that directly help businesses. So this way, you don't just have a phone number, you actually have the person you need to talk to when you have that problem. Also, you get to meet Greg from Secretary of State's office. Being the ombudsman, his job is to call that agency for you and go, why are you busting this guy's chops, basically? How do you fix this, right? What is the steps they actually need to take? So it's person-to-person connection. All business owners are eligible to go to this. Please come. If you have a community-based organization or a government agency you represent, let me know. We'd love to get you there to table and network as well. Cornerstone Business Development. This is a new program that I created last year. We just finished our second cohort. It is our prison inside business training program at SCI, Santiam Corrections. So that is the minimum security, soon to be released group of adults in custody. This cohort, we had 12. Our first cohort, we had 16. And our first people that actually get released within 3 weeks. And then another gentleman will get released in 40 days. They are going to be our first actual out of prison, come into our center and get advising. We're super excited about this. All the statistics prove that if you do any type of business training in prisons, recidivism goes from about 30% to low single digits. 4 to 5% is the current estimate. There's a program out of Eastern Oregon with their construction program. It's down to 1%, right? So our goal is to get that down to single digits. We're in a unique part of the state. We have 3 prisons in our state, in our area, and then we have a federal prison. So our goal is to get this program up and running. I am self-funding it right now is the other thing. I am using the money I get from renting my building to fund this program. So prison education didn't have any money, and DOC was like, it was pulling teeth just to get in there. And it's a really exciting program. It's actually why I wasn't at the event last night. I was at SCI. I was in prison, as my wife always says. Can you call me when you get out of prison? You know. So thank you. Cool. So we have a grant right now with Willamette Workforce Partnership. It's called the Preparing for Supervision and Leadership Cohort. And what that is for anybody who has employees that you want to keep and you possibly want to change them into managers someday, you send them to us. We do that training. Finally, our biggest, really coolest new program, I saw Brian in the room. He was one of our speakers at this, is our Power Lunch series. It is a free workshop on the second to last Wednesday of every month. Don't let the name fool you. You do have to bring your own lunch. The idea of Power Lunch is you're not wasting your lunch hour at a meeting, right? I actually took a little advice from Tom and the guys at the Salem Forum lunch, right? You're coming here for a lunch, but let's learn something while you're there. So we have that. We also have Ready, Set, Start Your Business, which is a twice a month online, how to get your Secretary of State registry, how to start your business, all that basics. So, cool. That was it. I'll talk about the last thing for my last 30 seconds. So our flagship offering is our small business management program. It is a school year based business management program. Think of it as an MBA for a business owner. We have people from 2 years in business up to 25 years in business that take this class. It is a deep dive into 9 different subject areas. This month, for example, is AI, and then customer service and sales is our combined class this month. We've had marketing, we've had HR, we have finance. And what it does is it gives business owners a chance to learn more about that subject, taught by subject matter experts or college professors. And then they receive specialized extra advising during that month with our advisor team. And it's really inexpensive too. It's $800 for the whole year. And we're already recruiting now for our next program, which will start in the September school year. So anyway, really excited about all the stuff we're doing. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm right 3 blocks that way at CCBI, Union and High Street, free parking, right? I know downtown parking's coming. So free parking at my building. All right. So there's our, that's the QR code if you want to request advising, and then our direct number and my email. So thank you again for your time today. Really appreciate being here and love what you guys are doing.
Great job, Brian Brisky, for participating in that program. Just so you know, the next Salem Capital Connections meeting is occurring on Thursday, the 24th, 7:30 a.m. at the center. Questions for Matt? Good on
I
it.
love it. Must have done a good job.
Any questions online?
Good to see you.
I'm remiss, we have a great audience online watching as well. So online audience, if you do have questions, thank you for the feedback that you're not hearing the questions from the audience. I will try and repeat them when they come. And if you online have questions, please submit them into the chat box. Next, it's a pleasure to introduce our past president, TJ Sullivan. TJ serves as president of the Salem Main Street Association. He's going to talk to us updates to the city's Safe, Clean, and Healthy Salem initiative. We had a categorical win on our downtown parking, something the Salem Chamber publicly advocated for since October of 2025. And I won't steal his thunder there. And then TJ, if you would, an update on the economic impact that the Salem holiday season had. I notice he is also joined by a couple board members in the room if you'd like to introduce them. So TJ, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yep, we are coming to the end of Christmas. If you haven't taken down your Christmas lights yet, you can come down on the 7th and 8th and help us take them down in downtown Salem. Ruben Garabai has been really proactive in getting those lights up, and I know that talking to a lot of the retailers, they appreciate having the extra lights in downtown. It makes it a better season for them as soon as they go up. So, then Hal Rose from Chariots is here, and she's a valued part of our team. Our board is all obviously not paid. We're a nonprofit, and the amount of work is actually pretty astounding for what we do. Just from advising the city on stuff, the city manager came in and we held our first stakeholder meeting downtown, and her eyes were opened wide to what's happening in downtown Salem. There were a couple of young ladies who testified about just the conditions for young women in downtown Salem, just getting to their shop and back, or even closing up their shop at night. And it's, just an unsafe, unfriendly situation for them. And they gave raw testimony that was really emotional. And the city manager and the mayor thankfully heard them and said, we can do a lot better. And the next day we had an officer walking around, talking to people, and it made a huge difference in terms of overall safety. And that was a great connector. And people are like, how could she be a city manager and not know what's going on in downtown Salem? She's got to worry about sewer laterals as much as she worries about downtown. And that takes a lot of time and energy and effort. She's doing a great job. And I'm really proud that they had their first reading about ending the downtown parking tax. And Tom deserves a lot of credit for making that happen, putting that seed and pressure in their head and on their minds. With the advent of Beep Beep Salem, they forecasted initially 1.4 million or 1.2 million in their first year that they would collect. They hit 1.4 in the first 6 months. So they also were having a parking tax that's paid by all the downtown merchants. And so it started out as, well, maybe we could get rid of the parking tax. And then it morphed into, well, maybe we can give some money back. Governments don't give money back. I told Tom, we were sitting in Venties, I was like, there's no way they're ever going to give a dime back. They just had their first reading, and it's going to second reading at the next meeting to get rid of the parking tax and to give a refund to all the downtown businesses. So that'll be a nice welcome shot to a lot of them. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but I was talking to Kat Sewell, who's on our board, who owns Sewell Suites. And, she was just talking about what their payroll, what their costs are. And yeah, an extra $600 a year, it hit hard and hurt. So getting that money back, their business is going to mean a lot to a small business. So that's a good thing, and we joined in and helped to advocate for that as well. And we've been advocating that they use that BP Salem money, keep it in downtown, spend it on things that make downtown clean and safe. We did a poll at Main Street where we polled patrons in the Salem area and we said, what are the things that keep you from coming downtown Salem? Top two answers, safety and cleanliness. And so, okay, we got police officers walking around. We got 2 more HST officers coming. So now we need to work on the clean side of things. So we've put together a clean team and they were down there. They removed leaves, trash, and human waste. And they were active for 2 months. And we've just finished up. So if you notice the clean sidewalks when you go downtown right now, it's because of the clean team. And what I'm most proud about, we got a call one day from Celia Ritter, who owns Wild Pear, and she said, hey, I can't today. Somebody sprayed diarrhea and food all over the entrance to Cook's. And it's affecting, people coming into our restaurant. She said, normally I would clean it. I can't today. It's been too much. I said, don't worry, we got you. Our clean team was over on High Street. And I called them and said, guys, I need you to reroute over to Wild Pear right now. They got over there. They have a chemical that freezes anything that's liquid and it kills all the bacteria instantly and they can clean it, scoop it. And then our pressure washing team came in with 200-degree water, sprayed it at 300 miles an hour, an inch from the surface, and got it clean. So I feel good about doing that for Celia. She's been a champion of downtown and has made a real difference from Ritter's to the Wild Pear. So it was nice to be able to pay her back a little bit to help make it clean. So I feel like where things are trending in the right direction. We had a great holiday parade. If you weren't there for it, there were easily 15 to 20,000 people that came into downtown Salem to celebrate with the parade. And we ended with a snow machine on top of the roof of where the Great Harvest used to be. And what was enjoyable about that was they were spraying the fake snow. It's soap, it's bubbles. And there was a kid out there that was catching them in his mouth. And I was like, hey buddy, for each one of those you catch, you can say a bad word because that's soap. So so that was a fun thing we were able to pass out over $5,000 worth of gift cards for downtown businesses. So one of the things we heard is that the parade takes away from businesses because people don't want to come down and spend all day in downtown. And so the idea is we want you to come back, right? We do the parade on Black Friday, next day is Small Business Saturday. So we passed out $5,000 worth of gift cards. So first we spent $5,000 in downtown Salem. And then, when we passed out the gift cards, they went in and they spent an additional amount of money. So Azul's and Sewell Sweets and some of the newer businesses, Spicy Bites, all those businesses had gift cards that were passed out at the parade. So that was a lot of fun to see. I came down the next day, was with Buddy the Elf, and we walked around downtown helping to make the holidays a little bit brighter for folks. And downtown was packed with people. And I have 14 retailers that I talked to. Just tell me how you're doing financially. All 14 of them were up this year over last year. So that's for my own Dow Jones for downtown Salem. That's a good sign. So we're going to keep the cleaning up. We'll start up again in May. We'll go by May and June with cleaning downtown. It makes a difference. We have the Citizen that's going to be coming online. It's going to be offering additional housing in downtown. And then Doritos is coming in. The rest of the grocery store will be coming into the old Rite Aid. So, we're starting to get more people living downtown. There's now a restaurant a grocery store option, which for years and years has been something that's been lacking in downtown. So I'm excited to see both of those two things. I am going to be curious to see how the grocery store does with the unsheltered population because they have been so far fairly disrespectful to the Safeway. And they've had a lot of struggles there, so much that Safeway has actually talked about pulling out of that location. So we need to be thoughtful about what happens moving forward, especially with that new grocery store. So hopefully we'll see this momentum continue. Main Street is going to be doing everything we can to come up with additional events that we can do on the cheap to bring people into downtown to help promote all the great things that are happening.
TJ, would you mind providing an update on the, I believe it is 9 outdoor structures that still remain? I will give you some perspective. One of the things that you see is during COVID, we constructed outdoor structures to allow restaurants to have overflow outside because due to distancing requirements. Those are taking up approximately 8 to 10 spots, some a little less in the downtown, and there's a number of them placed. I spoke firsthand to Dino Venti. Dino is ready to have his structure removed. That conversation is beginning with the city. Has Main Street taken any sort of formal position on that or advisement? It looks like the city is going to take on that discussion next.
Yeah, it's an interesting dialectic between restaurant owners and retailers. Retailers would love to see those gone. Restaurant owners are still like, well, it's additional seating, it's additional revenue. We get that. We haven't taken an official position yet, but more just helping to guide the conversation and bring people together so that restaurateurs understand how it affects the retailers. And some folks like Kat Sewell on our board, Kat would just as soon see them all removed because it impacts her business. And so as restaurateurs, they care about their neighbors and they're very conscientious. And when they hear, oh, this is how this is affecting you, I had no idea. Then like Dino Venti, they're more inclined to remove. So right now we're in the trying to get everybody onto the same page. At some point we will take an official position, but right now we're trying to just keep the peace and help everybody understand how these things affect. And to be fair, the restaurateurs have been very forthright about these are how these things have helped my business. And the retailers are also conscientious about wanting them to succeed because frankly, I mean, the restaurants bring a lot of people into downtown Salem and if you have to wait, a lot of times you spill over into some of the surrounding shops. So it's we have to understand how each one plays a role in the lives of the other.
Great, appreciate that. If you have not spent time downtown, I encourage you to do so. It is not simply the restaurant scene that is very eclectic and you have tons of options. There are great retailers, but we are also seeing the rise in businesses that are just relocating downtown due to the size of different options in the shop. So there's a great opportunity to be spending time downtown, but as your Chamber of Commerce, I'll encourage you to spend time all over Salem because there's many great commercial hubs in our city. Open it up for questions for past President Sullivan. Yes, Amy.
As somebody who's not a retailer or a restaurateur, how would you quantify the impact on a retailer for those outsides? And what thought is given to the safety of having these seating areas in the street?
I can't speak to the city and the safety issue, but for the downtown retailers, they quantify it, I guess, in terms of it's taking away parking revenue through beep beep, but it's also taking away spots that are right close to their shop, which a lot of times for them, there's a one-to-one connection with I got to go stop and pick something up. There's no parking right in front of where I want to go. Therefore, I'll keep going and maybe I'll come back and maybe I won't. And so they do say that when there's open parking anywhere near that, they're more inclined to capture those sales.
Amy, and truth be told, we do have the quantification of what parking would pay versus the aggregate of what they pay to have that extra spot, and it is not equitable as far as if we were doing even Steven. The city is aware of that, as are the restaurateurs and the retailers. But we must remember where we came from, and to be nimble as a city and let that occur really saved a number of our restaurants. We ought to be equally as nimble as we look at not being in times like that and understand the amount of dollars that went into constructing those. Those are not willy-nilly facilities. They had very strict parameters for safety and what had to be built in those facilities. So did they net out? We certainly would hope so. But as an example of us being nimble as a city to protect our small businesses. So by and large, I hope there's not a poor taste in people's mouths, and it sounds like the city is beginning to address where we go into the future. Dick?
TJ, did your group have any comments on that November approval at the city council where 33 people said that you had anything making a difference?
I mean, I'm not sure which one,
Happens a lot.
oh. Yeah, you know, that, the same person who,
City council members voted against.
yeah, I do think, you know, it is unfortunate, and we have, after those two young women got up and testified, gave the raw testimony, there, I read there were two men who made mocked them online, saying, when I go downtown in the middle of the day, I am perfectly safe. And there was a city councilor who actually filmed herself walking through downtown saying, here I am in the middle of the day and I'm perfectly safe. I've got nothing to worry about. It's like, okay, well, I want you to go at 6 a.m. to a parking garage and spend some time in the stairwell of a parking garage and tell me how safe you feel. And so there is a disconnect between some people about just the safety and who invests in downtown. And some people think that just because you own a business that you get a money tree that comes with the business, you just shake that money tree whenever you need some extra cash. And that's just not how it works. So unfortunately, you know, there is a disconnect, and we're working to change that mindset. That the sign code issue was a good one where, you know, we were able to bring together. After we had the meeting here, I emailed Stephanie Weil and Corey Spady from Salem Sign and Brad Brenthaver from Fast Signs and said, can we just get together and talk about the sign code? Because Stephanie's not a bad person. She's just enforcing the code. The code is ridiculous. And we need to have a discussion about the code and who put these codes into place without any real oversight that then, you know, hampers businesses and creates a problem between the city. And so I think that helped the city to see, okay, we do have a problem and we just need to pause this program. So it takes a while to overcome, but you're right. I mean, it is unfortunate. That comment about the good old boys was significantly unfortunate because there was a donor, a business person in Salem who was willing to spend his own money to completely redo Marion Square Park, to redo the bathrooms, to redo the grassy area, and to turn it back into a jewel in our downtown. And after that comment about the good old boys, he said, "You know what? If I'm not appreciated, I'm not going to do it." So one person by one dumb comment by a city councilor killed a massive investment in our downtown, and that's super frustrating.
You gave me a softball on sign. I'll circle that in a second. TJ, how far does the downtown extend? Is the Salem Chamber considered part of our downtown core?
Union, let's see, Trade to Union, the park, the river to Church is really what is considered kind of the downtown core.
I need to, then I'd
You're like a
officially like to
block out.
ask for
Yeah.
an official presentation of the clean team and what they can do. We've had 2 fires in the last 2 weeks on our porch that has done permanent damage. I would love to see if I could get a demonstration of the clean team's work. So I can tell your story. I'll film it and I'll show you the great work that a 200 degree power washer can do, because we need some help in our building. It's taken some significant damage on both sides of it. TJ did a softball for me on the sign codes. I'd like to credit Brittany Randall, who is in the second to the back row here. Our organization is going to be drawing together individuals who have had faced major challenges with signs and side code enforcement. If you are listening and hear this, or you are in this room, please do not miss the opportunity to participate in that meeting. This is a preparatory meeting, which we're going to come up with a construct of what we're facing as a business community, and then bring this feedback in aggregate back to the city and city council. And know that city manager Kristen Namburi is very committed to listening to the voice of businesses. She has been a fantastic partner, very reasonable. She wants this city to serve its residents, and its residents includes its business community. So we're very encouraged, and we're going to be hosting this meeting in short order. Our director, Jennifer Martin, has been very closely tied with this as well. So if you'd like to participate, we would love to have your participation in that. Any other questions for past President Sullivan? TJ, thank you for your work. I'm very excited to bring you our next presentation because the timing is perfect. We have long had a great relationship with all of our law firms in Salem. And we've had a number serve on our board of directors, including members and partners from Garrett Heeman Law Firm, but certainly one of the most prolific law firms in our city to be incredibly active beyond Sherman, Johnny and Hoyt. I mean, I can go on and on. They've all really contributed. But Sawfeld Griggs has been a long-term supporter of this organization, including having 2 past presidents from within their organization. One of their up-and-coming partners is Garrett Euretia. Garrett is a graduate of our Leadership Salem program. He's been very involved in our programming across the board. And we asked, hey, we're kicking off February. There's a lot of complexities for business with changes and different HR laws and the like. And Garrett and his team are very involved in this category. This is normally, this type of presentation, the like, is normally something we pay quite a premium for if you were to bring them in as business partners. And it shows the commitment that Garrett Heeman has to this business community, that they're willing to come here, share some expertise. And if you want further information on how your workforce can be affected, I know Garrett and his partners would be happy to come into your place of work, or you go to them and enjoy their expertise. So with that, I'd like to introduce Garrett Euretia, who is going to give us kind of the update on new employment laws kicking off in 2026.
Great. Thanks, Tom. I'm happy to be here. Just two housekeeping matters first. Apologies for my last name. Wasn't my choice.
I've been Tom Hofer,
Yeah.
too far, all my whole life. Don't worry.
Yeah. So I hope you don't mind my correction.
correct me.
Yeah, Garrett Euretia.
Thank you.
It's a difficult one. I understand that. But I'm happy to be here. And then the other just quick correction I'd be remiss if I didn't is I'm with Sawfeld Griggs, not Garrett Heeman.
Did I say he was with Garrett Heeman? Oh, I'm sorry. I was noting all of our law firms. I'm sorry.
No, it was
Definitely with Sawfeld Griggs. My apologies.
Little slip there at the end. No worries. I know Garrett Heeman is another great community partner for the chamber, but just wanted to make that correction. I'm excited to be here. I can talk about employment law a lot, so much so that when I told my wife that I only had 25 minutes to go through this, she made a bet with me on whether I could get through my topics in that amount of time. So I'm hopeful that Tom will keep me on track so I don't lose that bet to my wife. There's been a lot of changes in the past couple of years when it comes to employment law. We're not going to get through all of them today. This type of presentation I could usually do for about an hour to go through the complexities of that. I'm going to try to keep it high level and focus on big picture topics, but I will be around for the rest of the meeting. If you do have questions for me, I'm happy to answer. Then you can always call me or email me afterwards as well. With that, we'll just kind of jump right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is a topic that we get questions about a lot, especially recently, is the no tax on overtime that was passed under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act at the federal level. That phrase is a little bit of a misnomer. There still are taxes that are payable on overtime. From an employer's perspective, not a whole lot changes as far as the daily or the payroll withholdings that we do. The critical change is that we need to have systems in place to track what is qualifying overtime, because how the legislation actually works is employees who earn compensation for overtime worked, overtime that's required to be paid under federal law, they get to deduct that on their taxes when they file them next year. As employers, our obligation under the law is to report what the qualifying overtime is when we send out W-2s early next year. So we need to have some system, some process in place, working with our payroll company, working with our payroll department to be able to track that. The complexity that's added to it is that not all overtime that's required to be paid in Oregon is qualifying overtime under federal law that is eligible for the tax deduction. For example, if you're in the manufacturing sector, manufacturing employees are required to be paid daily overtime or weekly overtime, whichever is greater. If an employee is paid daily overtime, that's not eligible or it's not qualifying overtime under federal law. So that needs to be separately classified and not reported as tax deductible overtime on the employee's W-2 at next year. We've been working with our clients to establish those policies and identify what overtime needs to be tracked and reported. As far as I know right now, the IRS hasn't come out with their new W-2 form, but they're planning on doing that before next year's W-2s are due. If you've got questions about that, I encourage you to talk to your payroll company and make sure that they're doing the right things, because even if your payroll company screws up, you as employers can have liability if you report those earnings incorrectly. Relatedly, no tax on tips, same thing. Normal withholdings, if you have tipped employees on any taxes reported, got to separately track those and report those on the employee's W-2 next year so that they can deduct those from their taxes. One of the big pieces of legislation that came out of Oregon session last year is in scope, it doesn't apply to employers across the board, but it is pretty critical for those that it applies to know about, and that's Senate Bill 426. Some of you are probably already aware of that. It's the legislation that creates joint and several liability for property owners and general contractors if a subcontractor fails to pay its employee their wages in a timely manner. This is a big piece of legislation in terms of creation of risk and liability for property owners, for general contractors, developers, things like that, because we don't control when our subcontractors pay their employees. You know, we can issue payment and hope that they're doing the right thing, but we don't really have that direct control. It's part of the reason why they're a subcontractor is because of that connection. What this law does is it creates strict liability for property owners and general contractors. And so even if, again, we pay our subcontractors on time, we pay them everything they're owed, sufficient amount to cover their wages, even earmark funds saying this is for you to pay your employees' wages on this project. If they fail to pay, then we have exposure there. So that can be pretty impactful when we're thinking about working on projects, who our subcontractors are going to be, and making sure that we're prepared for that. If you're not familiar with it, in Oregon, unpaid wages, the penalties and cost of dealing with one of those claims is pretty significant. The potential damages include not only the amount of unpaid wages, but penalty wages, which often exceed the actual underpayment amount. Attorney's fees are mandatory if the former employee, the plaintiff, engages an attorney. And there can be interest on the unpaid wages from the day that they were supposed to be paid to the time that it was actually paid. Those claims have a long statute of limitations. It could be up to 2 years under this piece of legislation. So the interest could be significant as well. Unfortunately, normally when there is some sort of liability that we're trying to avoid, the way to do that is to contract out of it and have some indemnity provisions for subcontractors. This legislation prevents that. So I guess point being, the takeaway here is if you're a property owner, if you're a contractor using subcontractors in the construction industry, there's a significant amount of risk if your subcontractors aren't paying employees appropriately. And there's limited recourse, limited availability to mitigate that risk. We can put some provisions in contracts that include requiring certified payroll records or withholding payments if we don't get the payroll records to verify that our subs are paying people appropriately. But that's pretty much it. So got questions about that? If you've got concerns, contact your lawyer. We've got a construction group in our office that has been working with community partners to add in some additional provisions into subcontracts to kind of mitigate this risk because it is significant for those that it affects. Another topic that we talk about a lot, this one's not brand new, but it is relatively new, paid leave Oregon. This is a new paid leave law, similar to unemployment. It's kind of a hybrid between unemployment and OFLA or FEMLA. Been around for a couple of years now, but we still get questions, particularly from small businesses who aren't as familiar with that process because they've never been subject to OFLA or FEMLA. A reminder, paid leave Oregon applies to all businesses, regardless of the number of employees you have. Those other laws, you know, the Federal Family Medical Leave Act, FEMLA, Oregon's counterpart, OFLA, they have employee thresholds that you have to meet in order to be subject for them or to those laws. Paid leave Oregon changes that. As long as you have at least one employee in Oregon, you're subject to it. And what that means, if you're not familiar with it, is employees who work for an Oregon employer can take up to 12 weeks of protected leave for certain qualifying reasons. And that's all administered through the employment department, or if you have a private insurer, an insurance company. It's significant, particularly for small employers, because one, we don't typically have a huge bench of employees that can cover for someone who's out for a significant period of time. Two, it's not a leave that's managed internally. That's divested and given to the employment department or the insurance company. So employers don't have a say in whether an employee is eligible for this leave, whether they are granted the leave or denied the leave. And the law puts pretty tight parameters on, as employers, what our recourse is if employees aren't communicating with us about it and whether they're going to get our approval or not. So it's something to be aware of. We want to make sure that we're not running afoul of that, because it is protected leave, and an employee just inquiring about whether they're eligible for paid leave Oregon is a protected activity, which protected activities and retaliation for engaging in that is something that I'll talk about in just a few minutes as kind of a trend that we're seeing in our office. So again, if you got questions about paid leave Oregon, happy to answer those. Happy to talk to you about it. There's some good resources online as well. Paid leave Oregon's website, Foley's website, things like that. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to get familiar with it, because it is pretty impactful for small businesses, and you need to be prepared if you haven't had an employee use that yet. The next topic that I just want to briefly touch on, it's not necessarily a legislative update, but it has to do with the federal government and the current administration. Sure, everyone has seen headlines about ICE activity and things like that. I don't want to get into it. But from an employment perspective and an employer perspective, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about I-9 compliance and what that looks like and what we should be thinking about. No surprise, under the current administration, there's been an uptick in immigration enforcement. We're all aware of that. The catchy headlines are ICE raids and detainments, things like that. But behind the scenes, I-9 audits, we've seen an increase in those as well. USCIS is the agency that is kind of akin to ICE, but they've got the audit authority to go into any employer and request all their I-9 records and work authorization forms to make sure that we're not employing anyone who doesn't have the proper credentials or authorization to work here. And it's usually we don't get a whole lot of advance notice. So it's something that if you get a letter requesting an audit, there's a pretty short turnaround for when we've got to produce everything. So there's really no time to fix or correct anything at that point. We encourage employers to be a little bit more proactive to avoid any sort of scrutiny or any sort of liability if you get audited. The easiest way to do that, easy is a relative term. Easiest way to do that, the best way to do that is to conduct an internal I-9 audit, go through all of your I-9s, look at them. If there's anything that is wrong about them, there's certain things that can be corrected. You just have to correct it and kind of put a memo in there. There's other things that can't be corrected on an I-9, and you have to have that employee complete a new I-9. Doing that ahead of time is allowed, it's permissible, it's encouraged by USCIS. If we do that, if we make corrections, and then we do get audited, we're not going to get fined for the now correct I-9s. If we don't make the corrections and USCIS or another agency finds out that we've got mistakes on our I-9s, they can levy fines, and the fines can be pretty significant depending on what it is and how many violations they discover. The fines could be anywhere from, I think, $1,000 to about $20,000 per violation. Small employers, we have fewer employees to worry about. As the number of employees goes up, the risk there goes up as well of not only violations, but significant fines for those. Beyond I-9s, it's good to have a plan or a policy in place if ICE does show up. Workplace raids for purposes of arresting or detaining, suspected employees who are suspected of not being here lawfully are relatively low compared to other ICE detainments, but they still do happen. So our kind of guidance, I'm not giving legal advice today, just so everyone knows, but our guidance is typically have something in place, whoever the first point of contact is likely going to be if an ICE agent shows up, give them instructions about what they can and can't say, who they're supposed to contact within the organization to actually communicate with any sort of ICE agent on site. And again, around for questions if you have anything, any questions or concerns about that, I'm happy to follow up afterwards. One other topic that we get a lot of questions about, at least recently, is non-competes in Oregon. The past few years, there's been a swing or a push at the federal level to prohibit the use of non-compete agreements kind of across the board, across the nation. That's since flipped with the new administration, and there's no federal rule or law that prohibits them. Oregon still allows them on a limited basis, limited scope. If you're in the medical industry, it's even tighter than that. But we like to remind businesses in particular that if you want to use non-competes or you think that it's important, you still can, but there's some hoops that you've got to jump through. So don't just pull something off the internet and hope it works. There's very strict statutory guidelines that you have to follow in order to have a valid and enforceable non-compete. Couple of smaller but important legislative updates from the last legislative session. There's a couple of new laws in Oregon that require us to change kind of our hiring and onboarding practices. The first is there's a new law that requires us to give additional disclosures to employees about what payroll codes mean on their pay stubs. Just simply put, the law now requires us to have an explanation in the language primarily spoken by employees. So if you have Spanish speaking, you've got to do it in Spanish. If you have English speaking employees, you have to do it in English. But you got to have a written explanation of what payroll codes they potentially are going to see on their pay stub and what those codes mean. So for example, for Social Security, a lot of times it's abbreviated SOC space SEC. You'd want to have some sort of written document that shows that SOC space SEC, and then the explanation that it's Social Security withholdings. BOLI has a couple of model forms, one in English, one in Spanish. I encourage you to, if you haven't done so already, look at those. It's a free resource. Work with your payroll company or payroll provider to figure out what codes they're using and start that process for your current employees, sending out that notice, and then all future hires, just include that in your onboarding packet. In a similar note, there's a new law that requires or limits what information that we can ask job applicants to disclose on a resume. It's targeted at preventing discrimination against elderly individuals. And so Oregon now prevents us from asking about graduation dates and other information that reveals what someone's age could be. That information is disclosed voluntarily by someone, that's one thing, but we can't be asking employees to, or potential employees to disclose when they graduated or got a degree. That was my very quick recitation about things that we've noticed as far as questions that we're getting and things that we feel kind of fly under the radar in some sense. There's been a host of other legislative changes this last session. A lot of them are very nuanced and change some of the day-to-day, but it's not something that I felt was appropriate for this meeting. If you got questions about them, again, I'm going to be around. Just briefly, how am I doing on time?
You did solid.
Doing solid. Okay.
Your wife's gonna lose this bet.
That's great. That's great. I love it when that happens.
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Fantastic.
I'm calling her.
Perfect. She won't believe me if I tell her, so someone else is going to have to. Just briefly, a couple of trends that we've been seeing in our office. BOLI, the Bureau of Labor and Industry, it's an administrative agency, if you're not familiar with it, that's charged with investigating civil rights claims, wage and hour claims, claims about unlawful employment practices. It's a go-to for employees, former employees to file. It's free for them to file a complaint. They can talk to a BOLI investigator and help them kind of navigate the system. And BOLI takes on the investigation, so there's no out-of-pocket cost to the employee, the complainant, or an attorney. So it's heavily utilized. If you haven't had the experience of getting a BOLI complaint, good for you. Keep up the good work. Let's keep it that way. But we deal with BOLI a lot in our office. We help clients work through that system. BOLI, the last couple of years, has been asking the legislature for funding increases, citing heavy caseloads, backlogs, not enough investigators to really dive into the number of cases that they get and complete their investigations in a timely manner. The legislature last year approved a significant budget increase, with the idea being that BOLI would hire additional investigators to clear the backlog and then keep things moving. I can't remember what the number is offhand, but we haven't seen an uptick in or an increase in BOLI's pace yet. About 4 years ago, BOLI would turn investigations around in 4 to 6 months on average. Now it's about a year, and it's only a year. I think it'd be longer than a year, other than the fact that BOLI has 1 year to close cases once they're open. With that, we've been seeing a lot more of two kinds of resolutions at BOLI. One is a dismissal, so meaning there's no adverse finding against the employer, but it's not a dismissal on the merits. It's an administrative dismissal citing their heavy backlog. And so it's a win for the employer because there's no adverse finding, but it's not really a win because they're not weighing in on the merits. And that's a deviation from prior experience with BOLI. Several years ago, there was a lot more dismissals on the merits. We're just not seeing that as much. We're also seeing a lot more adverse finding against employers with BOLI. My suspicion, although I haven't verified it, so it's just speculation, is that BOLI is trying to justify their increased budget. First their request, now they're kind of trying to justify the legislature's decision to give them more. And so what that means is more adverse findings against employers. I say that not because I have any, grandiose solutions on how to fix that. It is what it is. But it's just a reminder to be mindful about what we're doing with our employees. And if you have questions, if you've got concerns, there's ways to mitigate risk as employers before we take any adverse action or do something that would make an employee want to go to BOLI in the first place. Again, last pitch. If you got questions about that, happy to answer them. I'm here until the end of the meeting, and you can always call or email me afterwards.
Great update. We'll take questions for Garrett now, Scott, and then.
Yeah, so pass through wage liability. So does that pass through the damages as well as the unpaid wages and interest and all of that?
Yeah, so all of the potential damages an employee has against their primary employer, which would be the subcontractor in this case, what this law does is it makes general contractors, property owners joint and severally liable for that, meaning anything that the subcontractor could be on the hook for, the general contractor, the property owner could also be on the hook for as well. There are some exceptions to this statute that I didn't get into. They're kind of nuanced. But generally speaking, yes, that's how it works.
Is that a civil suit, or is that coming up through BOLI? Does that start touching you when BOLI's got?
It would be a civil suit. So what the process works like right now, and I should qualify this by saying this is such a new piece of legislation, we haven't seen how it actually plays out yet. But based on the language in the statute, how it's supposed to work is an employee will send a demand letter to the property owner and general contractor saying that the subcontractor didn't pay them wages, and they're demanding that the property owner, general contractor, both pay those unpaid wages. The demand letter is supposed to give at least 21 days to cure it. If they don't cure it, then the next step would be filing a lawsuit.
Does EPLI cover that?
EPLI typically does not cover unpaid wages. This one is a little bit different because it's not us directly not paying an employee's wages, which is the typical scenario that this comes up in. It's a subcontractor not paying unpaid wages. I don't know how an insurance carrier would handle that. I'd imagine it would be excluded or disclaimed from coverage, but I don't know for sure. Haven't run across that.
Oh, your subcontractors.
Yeah.
Chris Cummins.
Yeah, back to paid leave.
Yeah.
Curious, has your office litigated, any cases on behalf of Salem small businesses? And if so, what generally have those been about?
I mean, we litigate cases all the time. I'd say more often than not, our cases settle. But I mean, broadly speaking, we litigate cases about all manner of employment law, both, violations of or alleged violations of civil rights, harassment, discrimination under Title VII, harassment, discrimination under Oregon law, retaliation for invoking, or inquiring about some sort of protected leave, protected activity, disability discrimination, pregnancy discrimination, unpaid wages. We really cover the gamut as far as types of cases that we handle in the employment sector. The only thing that we don't typically handle as far as litigation goes in the kind of employment sector is labor disputes, so unionized workforces and things like that.
Specific about what is it that small businesses might be needing to pay attention to as far as paid leave Oregon? What is it that would be some common mistake that an employer might make, or a small business might be making in that? I know we've actually ran across this particular issue too.
Yeah.
Actually talked to your office too.
Yeah.
But when somebody actually files for this type of a thing, what is it that the small businesses can't do in a situation, again, because the bench is low?
Yeah. So it can be difficult to navigate. I don't have any magic answers or magic solutions for you. What I can say is that, again, employers don't have any decision-making authority on whether employees are eligible or entitled to this leave. So one of the mistakes that I see a lot, or that I hear a lot, is that small businesses try to work with the employer, try to, weigh in on whether they can actually take this leave or not, or if they don't show up citing to this leave, trying to take some sort of disciplinary or adverse action against the employee. That's probably the number one way that you can get yourself into trouble, because again, it's protected leave as long as the employee has been there at least 90 days before the start of their leave. So it means we can't take any adverse or disciplinary action against an employee for asking about it, using it, mentioning it, telling other employees about it. Anything related to it is going to be protected. As small businesses, it's particularly hard because along with those protections comes the right to reinstatement, meaning an employee can use 12 weeks of leave, sometimes more in some circumstances. And then when they're set to return from their leave, we've got to reinstate them, meaning we have to keep their position open. We can hire temporary employees to fill that gap or bridge that gap, but we have to displace that temporary employee when the employee comes back from leave. One of the other difficulties that we see, particularly with small employers, is the employee changes their mind about the length of their leave. Originally, they get approved for 3 months of leave. They decide that they want to come back to leave at 2 months. We've hired a temporary employee to fill that 3-month gap, and now we're not ready for them to come back, and we want to keep the temporary employee, particularly if they're a higher performer than the employee that's left. And our hands are kind of tied at that point. We've got to displace the temporary employee and reinstate the full-time or regular employee back to their position. So there's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of ways to get tripped up. Generally speaking, I think the best thing to do is just try to establish good communication with the employee, work with them on that, knowing that we don't have a lot of tools in the tool belt to stop this.
Dick, followed by Jason, followed by Betsy.
From your point of view, what do you think the biggest problem is for a small business in general for Oregon on then? What is that that's encouraging people to go out of Oregon into the business?
I mean, there's a lot of difficulties in Oregon just outside of the employment context. I think from an employment perspective, it is increasingly difficult to navigate all the complexities of employment law in Oregon, and the legislature keeps making it harder for employers to just function and exist. I think that there's a disconnect with the legislature and how businesses actually operate, and particularly small businesses. You know, it's one thing if Amazon has to provide one of their employees 12 weeks of leave, they have, you know, a whole host of other people that can then cover that. Small businesses are different. And historically, there's been carve outs for small businesses on some of these more taxing leave laws, OFLA, FEMLA, even paid sick leave. There's carve outs for small businesses. Paid leave Oregon changed that, and it really hamstring, I don't know the correct way to phrase that, but it hamstrings small employers because it makes it so employees have a ton of leave, and there's a lot of liability that can attach if you do it wrong. That's just the leave scenario. You know, there's a whole host of wage and hour or other issues that small employers don't necessarily have the expertise in, that if you run afoul, it doesn't matter how well intended you were, it's strict liability. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. You know, for the unpaid wage example, in the context of unpaid wages, you can underpay an employee by, you know, a couple of dollars, and penalty wages can attach to that. Penalty wages for a late final paycheck could be 8 hours of pay per day that it's late, up to 30 days. So we've seen cases where the unpaid wages are, you know, $1,500, maybe less. Penalty wages are $15,000 or something like that. You know, I don't know those numbers in offhand. That's kind of an extreme example, but we see those types of things. And so I think that to get back to your question, I think that there's a lot of things that make it difficult for all employers, but particularly small employers, to operate without violating the law in Oregon.
Jason?
Garrett, I just wanted to say your wife went to bed now.
Oh, geez. I won't give you her number.
So, I am serving on the Employer Advisory Council as of last month for the Bureau of Labor and Industries. So I'm up at the downtown Portland office every quarter. So if there's things that you're seeing in your interactions with Foley that we need to bring to the Employer Advisory Council, I really need to personally know about that in terms of the leadership responsibility. So please take advantage of that. Also, Christina Stevenson, the Foley Commissioner, grew up in a small business restaurant. So she helped her parents run a restaurant. That's how she grew up. So yeah, she may have a certain, you know, political leaning, but just know that she actually grew up, like I'm sure many of you did, in a business. And so she wants to make sure that she's doing right by employers. I really believe that when I interface with her.
Thanks, Jason. Great resource. Betsy?
My question is on the I-9. What are the things that are typically need to look for? I help several small businesses also with their business coaching and HR and things like that. So what are the things that I can help them get the word out? This is what they are going to be looking into.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we see when we're helping employers do their I-9 audits is just missing information on I-9s. The I-9 forms aren't complete because you know, whoever's verifying it when the onboarding process is, they just miss something, they miss a line that's not complete. And correcting that, making sure that we've got the complete I-9 with all the information that we have. And then also just verifying that the information on there is accurate. Harder to do, harder to talk about in the abstract, but just kind of looking at the I-9 form and just making sure it's complete and accurate. And there's other kind of tips and strategies that we can talk about afterwards if you have a couple minutes.
I say, like, for example, when they have like the what's it called, the green card or president.
Yeah.
So I think so just putting those numbers and have that configured and things like that.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
You can see the wealth of information that Suffield brings to the table. Know that the Chamber has had a very positive relationship with their team on internal HR, external, and it's really a great partnership. And Garrett's fellow partner, Alan Sorum, serves on our Salem Area Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. I want to thank Garrett and our entire panel for spending this time with us this morning. We will gather again as a group on Thursday, March 5th. That will be one day before the short session wraps up. So we ought to have a lot of information for you on what we are going to be facing 3 days before it wraps up. Okay. I was close. It's going to be 3 days before it wraps up. So we may not have all the conclusions that we see, but we will certainly keep you updated in real time on those. I want to thank all our partners who are working and spending time over at the state capitol right now. These are big issues and have trickle down impact on all of you. So know our organization is going to be very active, and we may need to call you to action. Again, if you are interested in sign code, please connect with Jameson and myself to participate in that meeting. And watch your Tuesday emails. They give you the full slate of what's occurring in the political space. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully on Monday at our Salem Chamber Forum Speaker Series Luncheon. Thank you all.